Hey guys, my name is Batimio, and now that the Final Stand DLC has finally arrived, I wanted to give my general impressions on the expansion pack, because admittedly, I was a little worried about these maps. I played the Conquest version a lot on the CTE, and while I enjoyed them, I thought that DICE did a phenomenal job at capturing epic large-scale warfare. That's exactly what they are, large-scale warfare. If you're not a tank or you're not an engineer, you're gonna have a hard time finding enjoyment on these maps. Like, you really need to enjoy that vehicle-centered gameplay. And so I was worried that for someone like me who enjoys more of the infantry type of combat, going into this expansion pack, that it would be a little bit of a letdown. Little did I know, though, that DICE had an ace up their sleeve, and that came in the form of Domination and TDM. These, in my opinion, are arguably some of the best infantry-focused maps that we've had in a very long time. They have plenty of flanking routes, not too many where you're constantly getting hit from a random direction, a great flow to them, but just in general, it provides that infantry-focused gameplay that I thrive on when I play Battlefield, and does it phenomenally. You may have noticed that in a few sections of the Conquest large versions of these maps, that there's sections and parts that just don't make any sense and they feel out of place. The best example of that I can think of is an Operation Whiteout. There are these huge rock structures, great canyons, there's these little alcoves that you can hide into, different elevation changes, and you would think that there would be some objective that you would fight over for Conquest. Nope, there is a flag that's directly in front of them, but as soon as you venture into all of those different canyons, there's nothing back there. It just feels like wasted space. The first time I saw that when I played on the CTE, I thought to myself, why did DICE take the time to add in these admittedly really cool canyons, these awesome rock formations, but if no one's gonna be fighting back there because there's no objective, there's no incentive to be in those areas, then why even take the time to add them in the game in the first place? What DICE has done here, and I think it's very smart on their end, is that they've created fun, large Conquest versions, but they've also allocated space that makes sense for the smaller game modes. This is not what DICE has done in the past. I mean, Conquest is the bread and butter of the Battlefield franchise, and it makes sense that they would want to go all out on that game mode. They would want to make those maps work well with that game mode in mind, but they always fell short when they slapped in the other modes into the mix. The best example of that I can think of for this is clearly Silk Road. When that DLC first launched, Conquest was a lot of fun, and it's still a lot of fun, but as soon as you tried out Rush, you realized that it was a nightmare, and that they did not design Rush or that map in mind with Rush in the slightest. There were moments where you were on the offensive team and you would have to run out in the open for a good 20 to 30 seconds while the entire enemy team lined up around the dune like a firing squad and would just rain bullets down upon you the entire time. It felt nearly impossible for the offensive team to ever get a foothold or capture those first two couple of MCOMs. It was atrocious, and it really does a phenomenal job of demonstrating that DICE goes in, creates a good Conquest map, doesn't take all the other game modes necessarily into consideration, slaps them on in there, like, okay, here, we'll put a couple MCOMs over there, and call it good. Sure, it can work, they do get lucky every so often, but overall, a lot of the other modes, except for Conquest, felt a little lackluster, and it was more of a toss of the coin if they were going to be enjoyable. Looking on over into Final Stand now, it is abundantly clear that DICE was avoiding that, and they've actually allocated resources in part of the maps that are gonna work for the other game modes. Operation Whiteout seriously is the prime example of it. Doesn't make any sense on Conquest why there would be these large structures, but as soon as you play on TDM and Domination, the entire battlefield revolves around that section of the map. And so I guess the point that I've been trying to get to this entire time, and I realize it's taken me quite a while to get to this point, is that if you were someone who was worried that the Final Stand DLC was not going to provide the type of gameplay that you were looking for, or you were a little hesitant thinking that the other game modes other than Conquest were going to be tacked on, don't worry. Sure, it's a little disappointing if you like infantry combat, you're not going to find that on Conquest. It's a little disappointing to me. I love Conquest, and I would love to have that high octane action, but I'm still thrilled that they've accommodated that type of play playstyle on maps that are well balanced and clearly designed around that with those game modes in mind. I really do have to give a tip of my hat to DICE for thinking around this problem and honestly coming up with a great solution. But as for playing on them, what I like about it is that, for the most part, a lot of them have plenty of routes and avenues, and they're fairly large. If you're getting nailed down in one hallway, it's just turning into an epic firefight. Instead of just sitting there in the meat grinder like you would have to on, let's say, Operation Metro or Operation Locker, you can flank around and try and hit them from a different side of the map. It doesn't just condense you down long hallways the entire time. Sure, there are plenty of long hallways if you like that meat grinder, but if you're smart about it and you're using the environment to your advantage and you have at least some general sense of what's going on, you can take advantage of that and get a great flank off on multiple players and have an awesome kill streak. I love that about it. My biggest critique of them, though, and it's more of a small issue, is that there's a little bit too much verticality for my taste, and it can lead to some annoying camping sniper rounds. The biggest culprit of this is Hangar 21. Like, the entire thing revolves around the hangar, and of course everyone is trying to get on top of the Titan. And when you're on top of the Titan, you have plenty of options to shoot people that are down below, jump down, Batman all over someone's face, they'll have no idea you're there, and it's very difficult to control the combat around you. I had a little bit too many moments where I just had no idea where I was getting shot from. I didn't think that I had control over my environment, and that can lead to some frustrating gameplay. Not all of them have this issue. It is clearly not a systemic problem with the Final Stand DLC, but just know going into it, it can be a little frustrating on a few of the maps, and I sort of wish they toned it down a little bit, especially on Hangar 21. But overall, if you can't tell, I am thrilled with the result of the Final Stand DLC. Went going in very hesitant, not thinking that this is going to be an expansion pack that I was going to invest a lot of time, but now that I've had a chance to play on the smaller game modes, I am clearly enjoying it, and honestly, I think that DICE hit this out of the park. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's little review or impressions of the Final Stand DLC. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think about this expansion pack. Do you agree with me? Are you enjoying the way that they designed the maps? Let me know down below. Until tomorrow, have a good one and take it easy.